Welcome to Law Without the Lecture. Today's topic, aging with confidence. And remember, a good lawyer knows the law, a great lawyer knows the judges, and John Haderlein knows the people. And today we are here with John and our guest, Michelle. As a reminder, John is the attorney at the law offices of John Haderlein, Attorneys at Law. He serves the greater Chicagoland area in Lake County and Cook County, McHenry County, and all collar counties, as well as Wisconsin and California. Very quickly, if you'd like to speak with John, you can call him at 312-316-4614. You can visit his website, bklaw1.com. So let's jump into our conversation doing Aging with Confidence. We also have Michelle here. Michelle, tell me how you say your last name. Is it
Tapnio.
Tapnio. Michelle is from...
You got it.
Thank you. Michelle is here from New Perspective Senior Living that's located in Long Grove. Now, Michelle joins us with over 2 decades of healthcare experience in healthcare with seniors. And Michelle and John, what I'd like to jump in today is really talking about the issues facing seniors. The number one issue that I understand right now is estate planning. Yep. So today, let's talk about the estate planning. John, let's start with you. What drew you to estate planning, and what keeps you passionate about the work?
I love doing people's estate plans. It's very interesting because, people start, we all, like I said, I kid around and I say, I plan to live in 150 years or fame, I'm going to live forever. But the truth is, we're all going to pass someday. This helps people sort of reconcile with the fact that they're not going to be here forever, and estate planning with their wills and their living trusts and their powers of attorney starts to take ownership of that, takes agency with that, as they say, and starts putting that stuff in writing so their kids are not burdened by a lengthy probate court process. So that's I like doing it just for a little bit of peace of mind, kind of like life insurance, just a little bit of peace of mind. It's just a little less stress when the time comes and you're either disabled or passed on, trying on your angel wings in heaven.
Yeah. And you shared with me when you meet with people, you do it in person. Is that correct?
Yeah, I make house calls. So a lot of my seniors prefer that. Some of them are not as mobile, and so I will go meet people in their homes. I'll meet them at Starbucks. I'll meet them at my office. But I still, the days of Zoom and all that, I wouldn't prevail upon, especially a senior community, to click on Zoom and then do a whole interview for wills and trusts and estate planning on Zoom. I would just say, hey, let's get together and sit down. Often there's coffee and treats and that kind of and it becomes a nice little sit down, usually with the grandparents. There's pictures of the grandkids around, and there's just, they're sort of they're kind of wrapping up their whole lives. And I get to be witness to that and help them wrap it up.
In person.
Yeah, in person. Help them wrap up, which is a very sensitive, sort of tender part of their life. They're saying, I'm not going to be here forever.
Michelle, you're there. You're helping families navigate, working at the senior living at New Perspective in Long Grove. So share with us how you see families struggling, and how do they come to you and approach the issue of whether it's estate planning or the idea of families and seeing their family do as well as possible if that moment in life arrives?
That's a good question, Terry. But I want to thank first John for inviting me here as am I your first guest?
My very first guest.
My first guest. That's good.
Yeah.
And thank you for that. That's a very good question. The biggest things I see families struggling with, when they first come to us, isn't actually care. It's the timing and guilt.
Tell me about that. Tell me about what you mean by timing.
Most families wait until something happens.
I
see. Either a fall, a hospital stay, a diagnosis, and now they're in crisis mode. So they're exhausted, overwhelmed, and they're thinking, oh my gosh, did we wait too long? Are we giving up on mom or dad?
Are you seeing that from the children?
Yes.
I see.
Yes. And what makes it harder, as to John's point, is many of the legal and estate conversations haven't fully been handled yet. So that's another stress. Power of attorney, financial planning, long-term wishes. They're still making emotional decisions and logistical decisions at the same time. That's what they struggle with.
Right, and certainly power of attorney. John, tell us about power of attorney and how that implies. Michelle brought a good point because we're talking about very emotional feelings taking place. How is power of attorney?
Well, powers of attorney they're only good during your lifetime, although a healthcare power of attorney, can, make decisions for end of life, meaning, do you want to have the plug pulled? But it also becomes sort of a pre-guardianship paper. And if someone's starting to lose their memory or they're in a coma, someone needs to make their decisions. And so when someone's lucid, meaning they're with it mentally, they put all this stuff in writing. Well, if something ever happened to me, I want my husband to do it. If my husband's not around, I want my daughter to do it. And then they do it in that sort of a sequence so that if the unthinkable happens, and Michelle says the unthinkable happens, you better have it in writing who calls the shots. And so power of attorney is just a document that takes care of healthcare for the healthcare decisions, and that's really important. Takes care of financial for the financial stuff, but I think in this context, somebody needs to be called on to make a decision, say for a nursing home placement or emergency surgery, stuff that's really critical and quick. Someone needs to have that in writing, and that's a specific person, and the families can't argue and dilly-dally about.
Right.
Yeah.
And in my family, my grandmother just was very passionate about independence and dignity and wanting to be on her own. But there was became a question of safety, Michelle. How do you balance that where there's the pride and the independence and balancing that with safety?
So that's really good. We encourage independence and honor the dignity of each person. So I think that's really important for them to know that it is not the diagnosis, it's the actual person, which means we have to find ways for our residents to exercise their independence in a safe environment. They can choose their meals. They can choose the activities that they want to participate in. And that's really important,
That
for
is
them
important.
to know.
Yeah, the sense of the sense of self. And John, I think that was important. You mentioned that you meet directly with the your clients.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
So that in-person sense,
A little human touch, a little, just a little. My mother used to call it TLC, a little tender, loving care, and you give them, you give them the dignity of a long life of work and kids and grandkids, and give them a minute to think about how do I want to spend my last days, and then when I'm not here anymore, how do I want that to be dealt out to my family, to be distributed to my family, and so. They make a plan. They're making a plan for their end of life, right? That's Michelle's world. And I'm making a plan for what happens. Those powers of attorney, they correspond. And then when they pass, their living trust, their wills, that kind of stuff will kick in order to distribute their assets without a lot of drama in the family.
Yeah, and like clarity, right? Clarity in making these decisions because they're already on an emotional roller coaster of how things should be done. And then they have to deal with the other part of it.
Well, and I even tell people things like they would do this, what they call pre-planning. Why don't you pre-plan your funeral? Why? Well, they have to face that fact that they're going to be dead. I had a friend, he had his casket, he got it at Costco. He's a great big guy, so he had the casket in the garage, and that's the one they buried him in because he was worried that they would be able to find one big enough for him. But, to kind of think through this stuff, my mother had her parents die before I was born, and she was 22 and 25 when her parents died, and said, so she talked to us like this, well, when I die, I want you to do this. And we said, Mom, don't talk about that. Well, you have to, because at some point, it's going to be true. There's a quote I always use, which is, if you live every day as if this one were your last, one day you'll be right. And it's true. We're not going to.
Well, that's a powerful quote, John.
Thank you. I stole it.
Is that Fred Rogers?
No, Leo Buscaglia. He was the hug doctor on PBS.
I see.
He used that quote.
Now, Michelle, I wanted to follow up. I think that was a very important part about the emotional impact. You discussed about a moment where a person may fall, or it prompts them to call up John, and John sits down with them and provides the direction in the legal documentation to get them on the right track. How do you feel after that moment has taken place?
Ooh, that's a good one. There's more clarity in them making the decision. So when they work with us, they're more proactive than being reactive. When things are in place, there's more participation too with the actual seniors as moving in. See,
right.
when you're in crisis, they come in, they want to make this decision. Everyone is very emotional. They don't know what to do. And then on the other side too, when they make when they go to tour and go to our community, their mom and dad are not with them. It's so nice for them to also be a part of that tour, a part of that decision making. So you
find that there's that sense of calmness has returned to their life. And John, do you see that taking place?
I think what Michelle's talking about, at least I know this with my own life, the more stuff I get to take care of, less stress. The less stuff that's not taken care of in advance, and then something happens, crisis exigent, as we call it in law school, but it's emergency stuff. You got to scramble, and you do whatever, and just if you think about pre-planning your funeral, maybe you'll save a little money rather than making some emotional decision and mom's passed and we got to have a funeral in 5 days. And then you're making the same kind of decisions for senior care. How does your senior mom want to live? And you can talk to someone like Michelle and do tours and all the other stuff before it becomes critical. And then the stress level goes down. I think when the stress level goes down, your life, your happiness, what they call your hedonics, meaning what you really enjoy about life goes up. And so, and stress is a killer. I think a lot of us just get caught in stress. I picked up the recent visit to a different place, but there's a little bit of stress at these senior facilities. I was talking to somebody and she says, 2 or 3 times a month someone passes. There's someone who lived there. It's one of the nicest places. And all night, all day, there's ambulances coming in and out, taking them to doctors, taking them to emergencies, taking them. And so it's just, there was more stress than I thought because these places are beautiful. And so I think our job is to try to lower the stress level. And then they get to have a happy life.
See, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, Michelle, John had mentioned that if he had one word to describe it, it would really be about now. Now is the time to get planning. And it came, a discussion about if somebody fell or somebody was hurt. What about those that have seen that? Because as John mentioned, you see people maybe passing away next to him. Is there other things in people's life that prompt them to go speak to John about estate planning?
That's, you know what, I'm thinking about that too. Like with that question that you said about like when you see people, these are actually prompts for you, like on your personal life. What should I be prepared for? Because if you don't know, like if you don't see it or don't experience it, then you don't do anything. I think that's one big thing. So going back again to the adult children, because I am still, even with like 20 years experience, the adult child, they're going through so much, right? In helping that. Not only are the seniors, but the adult children. You know why? Because now it's a role reversal.
Right. Well, that's a good point. Very good point.
The kid becomes the parent, and the parent becomes kind of like a baby sometimes.
The parents who raised them, they look up to them.
Right.
And now it's reversed.
Well, and we do see that every day. We see, for example, I think all of us have seen the child show grandma or grandpa how to use the iPhone.
Yeah.
We see it because that's the nature and a natural nature. That's nothing that we shouldn't shy away from. And how do you use it in your at your residence with your residents? When you see this, is this something that you would speak to them about talking with John, or how does that process work?
See, other part, the planning and working on the documentation should always be ahead of time. If my advice with families is that you don't wait until there's a crisis. So we always get together on the holidays, meet everyone. There's always a great way to start a conversation. It could be at the kitchen sink, kitchen area talking. It could be at the porch. Right. I think these things, although it's a very sensitive issue, we have to start discussing that, and we have to start looking at that, so that we don't have to be at that point where I need to know.
You're scrambling.
Attorney, help
You're
me.
scrambling.
Yeah. Look at go to a professionals, lawyers. It is very important to prep, to have that.
I mean, it's still going to be stressful when the person dies or they get put into, or they enter. I shouldn't put into, but enter a senior facility. But it's less stress.
Well, John, how do you see that when you're sitting down with people? How do you see people when you talk about? You're really talking about a time in the world where they will no longer be here.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking end of life, but there can be a sweet spot, which is the time between, say, they retire or they go into a senior, and some of them just have a grand time. They're playing bingo. They got lots of activities. They're going places. And then, the end of the terminal, finish to this is at some point their bodies are going to give up and they're going to move on to, another world. But I think places like New Perspective will give them as much joy and fun and hope as possible while they're still here on this earth. Yeah. I don't know. I'm guessing, right?
Well,
I don't work there.
Here's the thing. I think when you go to a senior living community such as ours, it's not about giving up independence. It's about enhancing it and finding support.
Yeah.
It's about living life on purpose. And that's what we try to find. When my advice, when you go to a senior living community for the first time and you come in, you know what you need to do? You need to start looking for people. Like, look at the people. Are they smiling? Like, is everyone happy? And that's the sense of, this is your move. Last move that's the sense of feeling you want to get when you come in. We always tell families that. Do you feel good about this? It's about the right fit.
Let's kind of close this process. If I understand it correctly, once Michelle, your residents have an opportunity to sit down with John, they're now comfortable. Talk about that next step. What would you want them to be looking forward to as they're now comfortable with their trust?
Right.
Would they move to having any next element for their children or whomever?
They could spell out a lot of that in the trust. They get the powers of attorney for while they're still alive. They put the house into the trust. They put their bank accounts into the trust. And then, like I said, they can lower the stress level. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine when you pass, and it's not going to be people scrambling or fighting in the family. You try to avoid that kind of family discord just by putting this stuff in writing. Is it perfect? No. Any of the documents could be challenged. However, the more you put in writing, the better. And trusts are a very private process. If someone passes and you have to open an estate for a will or no will at all, everybody can go look up how much you died with, what the will says, and it's a very private, personal thing. And you're exposing your most inner secrets, your assets, your estates, your wishes for what happens after you pass to the world. I think there's a nice little element of privacy that kicks in with the trust. And so I think when you put this all together, it gives the family a blueprint. Is it perfect? No. Is someone gonna be mad that they didn't get more? Maybe, but they've mapped it out according to your will. And I always like that word, your will. It's actually your wishes. It's your will. How you want things to go down at the end of your life. That's a good point. And afterwards.
And the process is not easy, right?
No.
But if they plan ahead. Yeah. And that's something that they've taken care of. It just goes, like I said, smoothly.
And they plan ahead with people like me doing wills and trusts. They plan ahead with people like Michelle thinking ahead for senior living, and then they've got a plan. And hopefully the rest of their life is spent with joy and sort of lowered stress and not scrambling when something happens.
Well, and certainly not distracted. I think Michelle spoke earlier about the stressors that come with shoulda, woulda, coulda. Right. So let's finish up as we wrap up today's show. Let's finish up. Michelle, I'd like to ask you if you could give families or your residents one piece of advice to start acting on today. What would it be?
Plan early. Have that conversation with your family. Don't wait until a crisis to do that. That's very common of what we see when people go to us. They're like already in crisis mode.
Reactionary.
Yeah, it is just very, very important for them to look into that. And then, and you know what? The biggest reward for that is peace of mind. We have families that come in that are prepared, and you could see the difference.
Yeah,
you see them they have their loved ones with them. They're touring with them. They're making they're proactive. They're making the decisions of if this is a good place for them. And it's so nice to see that. But, the reality is we don't see that very much.
John, we heard Michelle talk about prevention over far greater than reaction. Right. Tell me the amount of time that would bring people to this point? How many hours would this actually take out of somebody's day?
To do it, I mean, literally, I'll meet with a client for an hour, get all their details, go back, type everything up, maybe email them and say, we have the spelling right and all that. Go back, and in 30 minutes, they've signed all their documents. That is this blueprint for the rest of their life, for when they pass. And so say a couple hours of their life just invested, focusing on, and it's not hard. This isn't like hard decisions. It's just, let's just think it through. A lot of families, they give everything to the spouse, and when the spouse passes, they give it evenly to the kids. That's a real typical thing, and that's what they would get under the Inheritance Act anyway. However, there are little variations and permutations, and you want to provide for grandma's wedding ring, and you want, grandpa's medals from World War II to go to this specific kid that's now in the military. And so you can, it helps them detail. It sort of helps them wrap up their life with a nice little bow and a little bit of respect. And I'm really glad to be part of the process. Yeah.
Would you say it's fair to say, independent of the time that you spend preparing the documents,
right,
is it fair to say that in 2.5 hours, I could be
easily.
The time.
Call it three. I might need to have
a long movie.
Yeah,
I'll take note of that.
Yeah,
3 hours.
For 3 hours.
3 hours, and I could be. The prevention is necessary to have my life move forward without these stressors.
Well, at least on the legal side, you'd have those documents in place. 3 hours total. Like I said, an hour interview, and then type up everything. Say that takes an hour. We have you sign the documents. Call that an hour. I go record the deed to make sure that the house in the trust is in the trust. You go to the bank to make sure that the bank accounts are in the trust. And now you can exhale because you've kind of taken care of everything.
And you can do that by contacting the law offices of John Haderlein, attorney at law.
Yep.
John can be reached or even text at his phone number at 312-316-4614. You can also visit John at his website, www.bklaw1.com. Again, John serves clients through the state of Illinois, Wisconsin, and California. Thank you to Michelle Tapnio of New Perspective Senior Living in Long Grove, Illinois. Take a moment and tell me a little bit about senior living before we finish.
Yeah, so New Perspective Senior Living in Long Grove is an assisted living and memory care community. If you need to know more information about that, please visit us at our website at www.npseniorliving.com. Give us a call. Also, phone number is 224-351-8120. And we're in downtown Long Grove, just 23 Illinois Route 53. You always pass that route, John.
I love that place. I love downtown.
In Long Grove.
In Long Grove. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, John. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Terry. It's been a pleasure.